and welcome to the 64 Doors. Today we're going to open door 22. This is a special archetype and we call it the invitation. This is the portal to the human experience and the portal to the mystical teachings of the 7 sacred seals. In the gene keys, it has a sister transmission in the 55th gene key that is the evolution of consciousness and that goes from the shadow of victimization to the gift of freedom. And the 22 is the process of involution, of divinity coming down into form. And in this transmission, Richard Rudd speaks about the bardo states, the in-between states, when we have lived one life and we go back to that ocean of all the experiences and everything that has ever been human. And when we're there, we might get an invitation again to come down to the human plane. And we need to say yes to that in order for it to happen. And that is knowing that when we come down to earth, we're going to be in a body that is not forever. We're going to be with other people and in relationships that are not forever. We're going to have senses. We're going to have emotions. We're going to have a notion of the past and of the future. So we are saying yes to coming down to something that is going to lead to suffering and to joy. And it's only through that suffering, to saying yes to that experience, that we can actually transcend it and start to experience graciousness and grace. And that is in a simple sense what the 22 is about, is that invitation that we get of a human experience and how we say yes to that and how we embody that experience. So I want to take some time to look at it from a human design perspective and from a gene key perspective to make sure that we understand a little bit more tangibly how we can understand what this archetype does for us in everyday life and how the energy feels. And I also want to be able to point out, if you have it in your chart, whether it's in your hologenetic profile or your human design chart, what are the characteristics that can show up for you. So we're going to start with human design as usual. And in human design, we can see that the 22 comes out of the emotional center and it meets the 12 from the throat center. And this is the channel of openness. A design of a social being. It's the knowing circuit and it's a manifested channel. And here you can see the reference theme. Yours is a life of passion and of following your feelings. However, your lesson is to wait before you act or speak. The more patient you are, the clearer your emotions can be and the more powerful your influence. And we can also go and look a little bit more at the characteristics. So these can be things when you have the 22 in your chart. We know it's an emotional gate from the emotional center, and how can it express itself? What is this archetype living through you? So we have the internal motivator. It's the artistic urge to express. It's the beauty of shared melancholy. So a lot of music, poetry, dance, all the creative things that we can do from maybe a state of agony, but actually channeling it out so that it comes out in a shared experience. It's about passion and infatuation. It's the vivid emotional spirit. It's sharing our inner world. And we can see that this archetype has to do with the patience of being in the human experience, about listening to it, about holding space for itself, basically, as we are transmuting a lot of the shadows, the bridging between worlds. And it has a feminine essence of attentiveness as well, and graciousness. And we can see that the Achilles heel is the pressure to express feeling. This is the human design keynote more than anything, because it's a pressure that comes from the emotional center. And then the fear of silence and lack of growth, which could be, coming here to earth and not learning anything. And just, it's like, if nothing happens, then what? If we don't feel anything, then what? And there could be the nervousness over openness, because it's here to be open, but what if it's not received? And can be a nervousness around that, or to feel lost in that passion, feeling too much. The changing moods, that's also the emotional center has its waves. The melancholy, as if nothing is worth listening to. And it also has a kind of filter, only hearing what it wants to hear. So that means that, especially in the shadow frequency, it it can kind of stay there because it only listens to what it wants to hear. And the shadow, of course, doesn't want to hear anything positive. And the repressive nature can appear balanced. It's kind of internalizing everything. So it's a lot of repressed feelings that are boiling on the inside, and the fear of losing control, and like a lot of darkness on the inside, basically, instead of being able to be with it, is to push it down. And the reactive nature is inappropriate. So that's like putting it out instead, and reacting emotionally, and can be quite self-destructive in the way that that's lived out. Especially in the close relationships, that's always when the emotional center has the most influence, we could say. And maybe if we go back a little bit to the living library. So here we see the programming partner is the 47. This honor and oppression go together, graciousness and transmutation, and grace and transfiguration. I call sometimes these two keys like Jesus on the cross. It's kind of, when you have those two keys, if it's your life's work and your evolution, for example, it's almost like you need to hang on the cross before life can change. It's like you really need to have the worst, almost the worst, quote unquote, experience of being a human. That is when the transmutation starts. That's where that seed of grace can come from. You see, grace under pressure kind of goes together with that. And when we look at the channel we were just speaking about in the integral human design, it's the channel of passion. And you can see on the lower frequencies almost that possession of like being possessed by the emotions and the pressure to express them, and to be in that chaos, basically, of creativity, which is strong. The dream arc, I think, is beautiful. It's the swan and the deer, the animals that we can tap into this week. And don't they have to, if that's not graciousness, I don't know what's graciousness. So I think that's the most important things from the living library. We can also, I was saying in the beginning that this is the portal to the 7 sacred seals that are the more mystical teachings of the gene keys, but they are also they're connected to the gene keys. So you can see here that each seal is connected to a gene key. So the first seal is connected to the 40th. Here you can follow. Here you have the first seal is the 40th. The second seal is the 17th. Third seal is the 25, the fourth seal is the 43, the fifth seal is the 4th, and the sixth seal is the 63 that we have just been in, and then the 7th seal is the 22. So this is also something that you can look at in the archetype. Some of the resources that we have gathered has to do with the 7 sacred seals. Is also, Richard has done recordings. It's a course that you can take as well. I would say if you have any of these gene keys that I just mentioned in your chart, you are probably, you have the coding somehow for these mystical teachings in you. So I would probably go and find out a little bit more about them. You can also see that there is, an archangel that is connected to each one of the seals. And there is so much to say about them, but this is really a portal, an invitation to go deeper in the 7 sacred seals. And the 22 also have to do with, divinity coming down into form, but it's also purifying form, consciousness, coming into form, and eventually it's the rainbow body, the highest states of what a human body can become. From the 7 sacred seals, I wanted to bring it back to something more tangible and give you some questions for contemplation so that you can feel into how this energy moves through you and through your life. So where in your life do you create drama? Are you aware of that, or does it kind of blow up on you? How do your moods affect others? Do you bring them with you in your wave? Have you ever held so much inside that you eventually exploded? Does what you feel on the inside show on the outside, or are you repressing it? Do you have feelings or experiences that you reject because you feel like they are inappropriate or bad? Are you a good listener, or do you filter out the things that you don't want to hear? How are you creative? Do you let that come out? or do you feel this pressure to express but you don't know how to do it? Where can you bring in more graciousness to your life? That's probably one of the main questions this week. How can you invite more of um, that feminine quality in your life? And then I also want to invite you this transit to really look at our portal guardians. So we have an interview with Simone, who was channeling the 22 through a painting, and we're speaking about how that came to happen, and it's also connected to the Delta. We also have Joanna, who has the 22 in her chart, and she's going to channel for us what this archetype means for her. And there's also an audio that Richard did on the 13th that is connected to the 7 sacred seals. So there's a lot of information. Like I said in the beginning, it's a very, very broad key, and that's why we are calling it the portal, or the invitation to go in and to see that it's so rich. You could basically stay with this one transmission forever. So thank you so much